Hi guys, and welcome to my review for the INTUAURA Impact as well as the INTUAURA Reference 2019. I've brought back the balance because I've decided to add some extra information with regards to the balance and with regards to how good its performance is. If you guys follow me, you just recently seen that it's one of my top 10 choices for 2025 in terms of my personal tastes of single DDs above that $100 price point. I will be doing a second video which will be coming probably tomorrow, which is IMs under the $100 price point, although there is one particular IM that just crosses over ever so slightly, and I kind of thought I would include it in the over $100 price point, but I then decided to keep it in the under 100 because it's possible to get it at under $100, right on the edge, on the edge of the crossing over point. So I decided to keep it in the group of under $100 IMs. But anyway, on to INTUAURA Impact and to the Reference 2019. You will see that I've got here two Reference 19s. The second set was one I bought off someone that bought it and didn't like it, and I got it off him for a really cheap price. This is an IM that costs just over $110, $119 if I'm not mistaken. The impact is around $90. The balance around $140 to $150, depends. And I've only got two other IMs here, which that doesn't mean that I will not or cannot do further comparisons if that is what you want. But with regards to the balance, and since I had already talked about it previously, I decided to bring out just the oxygen because during the making of that top choices of over $100 IMs, I ended up listening again with more detail to the balance and bringing out a few other IMs, playing around a little bit with the tips, and lo and behold, I was actually quite impressed once again by the balance's performance. Especially when I compared it with the Tanstrom Oxygen, as you guys know, one of my favorite all-time IMs. Okay. As for the impact, I decided to bring out the Polar Unichrome, which is one of the most solid IMs that came out in the second half of this year at under $100. A really very nice sounding IM. I have to say that I was truly impressed when I first heard the Polar Unichrome, so much so that I actually got two units of it. I've got a green one, and I bought this the one that's yellow, although my yellow is more brown than yellow. But anyway, that's neither here or there. Anyway, let's get into this and not rant over here unnecessarily. I'm going to talk about the 2019 first. The 2019, it comes, well, in terms of cases, INTUAURA doesn't disappoint. This is the case of the balance for the 2019, or the impact. They've got the smaller case. They also supply the IMs with decent enough tips, which I ended up using. And as I was saying, for the DSP version, or well, for the 2019 with its DSP associated with it, the DSP is basically doing the tuning. It lowers significantly the base quantity that the 2019 has without the DSP, so just running the stock tuning. And it also kind of cleans up the upper mids, the mids, upper mids, and treble. Anyway, what can be said about the Reference 2019 with the DSP? It's a nice sounding IM. Doesn't do anything, I would say, wrong, doesn't do anything overly correct either, but that's not bad or good. It's just an IM that I think, if you are going to be using it with the dongle, which allows connection with let's say WalkPlay, the app, and you are able to then get a similar tuning done in that setup, I think then the 2019 will show better its potential. As I said, it's not that it sounds or that it has anything wrong with it. But I think the dongle, to a certain extent, is a limitation. And it's a limitation because um, it tries really hard to as I mentioned before, clean up the tuning of the 2019 without the 2019, by lowering the bass, as I mentioned, and fixing up the mids and upper mids and so on and so forth. But that attempt kind of makes the whole IM sound at times a little bit lifeless. It's kind of the best way I can put it is it kind of sounds almost like it's got a curtain in front of it. And it's interesting because when I connected it up with the normal cable, and putting aside obviously that then you have got monstrous amounts of bass coming from it. I mean, it's really, when I say monstrous, it is really monstrous. It's not so much in the upper mids and in the mids, upper mids, and treble that you notice the big difference. It's like I said, in the bass quantity. Just 1 second here. We're talking about at 200 hertz, for example. We are talking about the DSP version, the difference between the DSP version and the non-DSP version, or without the DSP cable. We're talking about a difference of 7 dBs, and that difference of 7 dBs basically keeps itself or maintains itself from around 40 all the way to about 300 hertz. So it's a significant chunk of energy. But the interesting thing about the DSP, the reference 2019, just using the cable without the DSP inline dongle, is that it sounds, without it, the sound loses that veil that I'm talking about. It's a little bit difficult to explain, and it's something that you would have to experience. It's something that you would actually have to take the 2019, listen to it with a DSP, and then straight away go and just connect up a normal cable to it, and you'll understand. You might not initially pick up on it because, as I said, the bass that it has is quite significant, and it is really a lot of it. But when you start listening to it a little bit more carefully, and you start listening to a lot of genres of music, and you don't just stick with, let's say, EDM or something like that, you start picking up on the fact that the 2019, the reference 2019, without the DSP, even though it does have that handicap of that excessive amount of bass, it just sounds open. It sounds like it sounds more realistic, okay? While with the dongle, it just sounds like it's been processed. It's like I said, it's not a flaw. It's what it was intended, and that's what they wanted to do. And it, like I said, it does nothing wrong in terms of the actual shell and everything. It's got a decent quality. It's a nice metal shell which seems to have been cast. Seems to be aluminum. I cannot be 100% sure, but that's the vibe that I get, that it's the aluminum shell. It's a 10mm driver inside. Everything kind of works quite nicely. It's got a pretty long nozzle, actually. If you look, that's a pretty long nozzle, but by in no means is this length being detrimental. It actually allows for the IM to go nice and deep into the ear, and I did find that a deeper fit does improve things quite a bit. It does help with the DSP cable. I'll show you afterwards. The peak that occurs is a peak that is centered at around 7 kilohertz, 7 point something kilohertz, as opposed to the peak without the DSP cable, which is at around 4.55 kilohertz. That peak up there, as I said, with a deeper insertion, it tends to move higher up and becomes less problematic. If that peak had been lower, you'd probably notice it. As I mentioned, the biggest difference here with the DSP is that they go for a very tuck style bass, which kind of is flat by 200 hertz, and then shoots along until about 1, and then it peaks, has the shoots, you get the pin again, and we have a gain of roughly, be it either one of them, we get a gain of approximately 10 dBs. Okay. And that's basically it. I mean, I don't, it's an IM that I don't want to criticize, because I can understand what it was, its intention. I just wish that maybe the associated dongle had been a little bit better quality, and that I think would have helped overall the whole the whole package be a little bit more more sensible. Or then as well, that this particular dongle would be compatible with WalkPlay. That would have been absolutely awesome. I think that if it had been compatible with WalkPlay and had a little bit better quality, then my opinion wouldn't be as kind of indifferent, which is basically what I have with regards to the Reference 2019 using the DSP cable. Without the DSP cable, using just like a normal cable, like I said, and putting aside that large quantity of bass, I did find actually the sound quite entertaining. And it's not the same, and by no means am I saying it's the same, but the kind of overall vibe and tuning that we get is a tuning which is kind of reminiscent of the ODA, the one dot audio Helios. It's got very much that same sort of vibe. Obviously, the fact that we don't have a quality driver of the same level as on the ODA, it does mean that the bass, which is about the same on either one of those sets, does become a little bit overwhelming, and it does bleed into the mids and does thicken up things unnecessarily. So while on the ODA that's not something that happens. The other IM which has a very similar style of tuning as well is an IM that I'll also be reviewing shortly, which is the Panon, the Unique, the latest single DD. Again, an IM which has a significant amount of bass, and then has the same sort of pina that peaks initially and then peaks again and then drops off. And the reality is, I actually enjoyed the Reference 2019 connected up just with a normal cable, and even with that detriment of the tuning not being ideal, I did prefer it that way. And so there you have it. I think, if you are able to connect it up with a dongle that is compatible with WalkPlay, then yes, I think then it makes sense, and you can then tune it with the 2019 curve if you want, and who knows, maybe the performance will the performance will definitely be better than with the stock DSP cable. Otherwise, you can just use it with a normal cable, and either listen to it as it is, or then just make your own tuning. I think there's enough quality here in terms of the hardware side of things for it to allow quite a bit of tinkering around. Anyway, that's that. I'm going to be talking now about the balance briefly. As you guys know, the balance for me is one of my top 10 IEMs for this year, and it's definitely an IEM that will be part of my favorite IEMs that I own. If initially, and I've mentioned this before, if initially I thought that the price could have been a little bit more competitive, as I've listened more and more to the balance, and as I have discovered, for example, the following, which is, if you actually really ram the tip into the nozzle, so it's kind of basically you're left with almost the nozzle and the tips almost flush. It is, I have to say that it is quite impressive how much improvement I got from what was already a really good sounding IM. It became even better. And this happened by a pure fluke of things, because the IM was kind of falling out of my ears because of the fact that these tips are a little bit on the soft side externally, and I kind of pushed the IM into my ears a little bit more, rammed it in so that it would fix itself. And then when I took it out, I noticed that the tip had become more flush with the nozzle. But all of this, I noticed straight away an improvement in terms of the sound. It it kind of, the best way I can kind of explain is it's kind of like if the sound was coming from inside my head. I know it's not the best way of putting it, but you know, the sound stage, the air, the space, the way that the IM automatically started interacting with my ears. I honestly didn't, I never really thought that I would, you know, be experiencing something like this, or something so minor would bring about such an improvement. I'm being definitely, you know, as honest and as sincere that as I can be. The improvement is noticeable. Let me put it to you, it is noticeable. And then I actually tried to measure the balance as well, with that kind of keeping in mind that adjustment that I did, and the difference, yes, was there, and I'll show you then the graph of the two, you know, with the tip in the normal position like I was using it before, and then with the tip more flush, and then when I was listening to it in that format, I kind of, hey, this reminds me of the Oxygen, and I brought out my Oxygen and I started listening back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And however much it kind of will pain me to say what I'm about to say, this is better than the Oxygen. It is. You know, that doesn't mean I'm gonna now not like the Oxygen anymore, or that the Oxygen. No, the Oxygen is still gonna be and will always be one of my favorite IMs. Okay, it's one. It was my first more expensive IM. It was the first IM that I bought. It cost me over $100. I liked it so much that I actually got three sets, I know, of different years. So that just shows how much I actually enjoy that Oxygen. And I still think by today's standards, with all of the overall improvement in terms of the, you know, the quality of the sound from more IMs being so high, while during the time of the Oxygen, you know, it kind of really stood out, and it was head and bounds above the majority of the IMs. Nowadays we have such good sounding IMs that no longer do you see that discrepancy. And the reality is, when you take into account that the balance basically costs half the price of the Oxygen, and is offering a performance, to my ears at least, that is superior to the Oxygen, I think that's quite impressive. I like I said, the balance is one of my favorite IMs for this year, and this little mishap, if you want to put it that way, that happened, just further compounded that liking that I have for the balance, and how good it is. It is really that good. The bass, the cleaning, the tonality of the bass, the tonality of the mids and upper mids, because both the balance and the Oxygen are very much mid focused, but the tonality and the timbre that the mids have on the balance, and I think it's very much down to the fact that it's also a resin shell, which is helping with that. It just sounds absolutely incredible. Really next level. I truly was taken back by how the improvement occurred, and how much of an improvement it actually was. Okay, and that then brings me to the Impact. The Impact is an IM that I believe shares a very similar driver to the balance. It's an open back design, as you can see. Okay, the faceplate, that's open back, resin shell. Once again, this is not the stock cable. This is actually a cable from a brand that I've been using some of their cables now lately, called Kulemi. Very nice cable, very low measurement of impedance. I was impressed. I have to say I was impressed, and better than the stock cable that comes with the Impact. And I think that the Impact was an IM that was initially going to be sold for way more money, but then for reasons which I'm not yet to disclose, INTUAURA decided to, you know what, let's cut the corners in terms of the accessories package. Let's cut the corners in terms of the cable, and so on and so forth. and let's offer this IM at under $100 to kind of shake the market and bring about a little bit of a very high performance product at a substantially lower price. And that's exactly what they did. If you guys recall, I said initially when I reviewed the balance some weeks back that it kind of reminded me of the Puller, or rather that the Puller kind of had the vibes of the balance at half the price and so on, and that maybe the difference in price initially could maybe be unjustified and so on and so forth. Well, let me get one thing straight away out of the way. The Puller is a phenomenal IM. It's really good, but it's not on the same league as the balance. It isn't. It's as simple as that. The Puller has got a sound and a tuning which is more in line with what we get here on the Impact, and by that I mean in terms of the bass that the Puller has. It's a bass which is more reminiscent of the bass in the Impact than on the bass of the balance. I'm just trying to get here. Where is it? Where is this? No. Get this out of the way here, otherwise it's just gonna get things confusing. No. Where is Impact? Exactly, number 16. Let me just put it here. Comparing the Impact with the balance, well, I think the name really says everything. We have an extra amount of bass being given between roughly 20 and 100 hertz. It initially starts at there's a difference of about 4.5 dBs, and then slowly comes down, and by 100 hertz the difference is roughly just 2 dBs. But this is a substantial amount of extra bass there, which is noticeable. You notice that it's got more rumble. And then the way that the mids have been done is that it's got that kind of meta dip or meta kink but between 2 and 3 kilohertz. It peaks at around 4 kilohertz and then plateaus and then drops off. And so it kind of has slightly laid back vocals, more so female vocals really than the male vocals, and kind of gives us a sound which is I don't want to say metal-like, but it is kind of metal-like because of that laid-back sensation. It's a sound that kind of reminded me of the KE4, the QE years. It kind of reminded me a little bit as well of the sound of the HiFIGO Mega 5 EST, the anniversary edition. And both of those IEMs are really good IEMs. I mean, and the fact that we have here a single DD very much so emulating that sound, I think it's already enough praise in its own. When compared with the Puller, it is kind of, like I said, trying to do the same sort of sound, the same sort of tuning. The difference here is that the Puller doesn't have as much energy put into its tuning between 3 and 8 kilohertz, and even though it is clean and detailed, it just sounds a little bit darker and curiously less polished than the Impact does sound. So overall, just breaking it down, bass, very much a sub-bass focus. Although there's ample mid bass and there's decent slam and impact, timbre and tonality are very much realistic, and the male vocals come across in a very let's say physical manner. You can feel kind of almost the presence of male vocals. Female vocals a little bit more laid back, and thus not where the impact really shines. It's in the bass, and especially in that low bass capability, the ability to rumble, that the impact really shows its strength. And like the balance, with the balance, it's all about being balanced and having that phenomenal mid-range presentation, vocal and so on. So this here is all about that mid-range presentation being a little bit dampened, so that it doesn't shout in any manner, and then giving us this bass presence, this very physical aspect to the bass. Mids, upper mids, and treble, really good. There are occasions where maybe the impact can maybe even come across a little bit V-shaped, but by looking at the graph, and you would say yes, V-shaped, definitely. The reality is, when you actually listen to it, it's not as such. It's not what the graph shows. It's way more balanced and way more coherent. It's just like I said, the mids, upper mids, and treble, they sound more laid back, more tame than what the graph would lead you to believe. I mean, we are talking about a pinna gain of approximately 10 dBs. Let me just make sure that I'm not misleading you guys. Exactly 10 dBs, but and a bass gain of around the same thing. That 100 hertz point that I like looking at corresponds to 3 kilohertz, and I think there lies the main reason why it just works very nice, and it just sounds very correct. The fact that they've pushed that point up higher, it just makes the impact sound warm and physical, let's put it that way, while the balance sounds detailed and clean, but still with a good sense of warmness behind it. In terms of its technicalities, detailed retrieval, I would say, is not exactly its strong point. It's rather more the timbre and the tonality where it shines. Although, having said that, I cannot complain and say, oh no, it didn't have it. No, it's got. But when you're going and comparing it with the balance obviously does a better job. But it's like I said, they have two different tuning objectives. And their name does justice to what those objectives are and what they wanted to achieve. When compared to the Puller, it definitely is better technically, better soundstage, better imaging, better detailed retrieval. It's better than the Puller, and the fact that they've able to offer it at a price which is very similar to the Puller, however much it pains me to say that the Puller was kind of one of the top IEMs at under $100. With the introduction of the Impact, that top spot was taken. It's as simple as that. There are a number of other very good IEMs at under $100, which, like I said, I'll be announcing them when I do the video and saying what are those IEMs, at least for me, in my opinion. But the Impact is definitely going to be one of the top ones. And this again just goes to show that sometimes the best products come from brands which we don't really are aware of or don't know about them, and they kind of pass under the radar. And I think INTUAURA, to a certain extent, is one such brand. They've got some really expensive single DDs at $500, $600, $800, $1,000. I won't deny that I'm quite curious, and I would love to be able to listen to one of them to see if the magic is there to justify in any way or form the value that is asked for them. But one thing I can say, be it about the Impact or about the balance, and even the Reference 2019, is the build is good. You can definitely see that there was some development done in the building of the IEMs. They didn't just throw parts together and no. The build quality, you can see that there's expertise that was placed into the building of these IEMs. And that's basically it. So INTUAURA Impact, a sub $100 IEM. I've seen it at $80 already. A sub $100 IEM that kind of really shook things, as I think was the intention from INTUAURA. Yes, the accessories are not the ideal, but where it matters in the build, in the driver used, in the way that it's tuned and how it sounds, it ticks all the right boxes, and I cannot complain. I just, it is a really, really good IEM. Anyway, let me just quickly now show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay, let's talk now the graphs. I'm going to show first the graphs for the DSP for the reference 2019. That's the graph using the DSP cable. And as I said, it's got that tuck here that flattens the bass by 200 hertz. That 100 hertz point there corresponds to just below 200. There is a nice amount of energy below 100 hertz for the bass. There's a lot of energy up there as well, and they kind of balance each other out. There's no real aggressiveness, nothing. It's just like I said, a certain sensation of a veilness that's associated with the DSP. I can't. It's not like I said, and I want this to be perfectly clear. This is not a bad thing. Most would be more than happy, but when I have the ability to listen to so many IMs like I do, you become a little bit more critical and a little bit more expecting. And I would have liked to have seen either, and maybe, who knows, maybe they'll do that on an upcoming improvement over the reference 2019. So a better dongle being used, or then the ability for it to actually, who knows, actually come with a physical dongle, or something like the EPZ, the TP35, the newer version, which allows you to connect it up with walk play. I think that would have been a nicer option. Fair enough, the price would have been pushed up, but you know what, you would have gotten a decent dongle with walk play capability, and then an IEM that's connected with it, that you would extract the best out of it. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Without the DSP, just using the cable, that's the graph, and as you can see, it's very similar here. That peak here is substituted for a peak on the DSP higher up, and yes, monstrous amounts of bass. But the interesting thing about all of this is, when you look at the graph like that, it actually sounds more natural, however crazy that may sound. And when I take things like, for example, the ODA, and I'm trying to find it here now where it is exactly, number 12. This is the ODA, the Helios, and you can understand why I wasn't offended by the tuning of the reference 2019 with just the cable. It reminded me of that, or even of the Panon, the Unique, very similar again. Anyway, this is the way I personally liked and preferred the reference 2019. Even though it's got this monstrous amounts of bass, it just sounded more natural, more realistic to me in this manner. So that's that. Now let me show you the balance, and how the balance stacks up against the oxygen, as I mentioned. So actually, let me first put here just the balance in it by itself. So this was the graph of the balance that I got, and that I was listening to with the tip, let's say, in its normal position. And this is how the balance ended up coming out once I did that deep insertion. I got a slight little boost here in the bass, as you can see, a significant improvement up top in terms of past 10K, and a more plateaued sensation here. Both of them were measured with wide bore tips, both, to make that perfectly clear. And it is incredible how different the actual, like I said, soundstage imaging, it was already good, it just became phenomenal. It became really, really good. And so much so that when I take it and I compared it with the oxygen, this was the result. The oxygen and the balance are basically very, very similar overall. I mean, it's not this difference here in the bass that will be noticeable. Maybe some of you might pick up on some differences here, but the difference that I did pick up on one and the other is that the way that the upper mids and treble are done on the balance is just more polished. It's just more elegant, and that's a tall order to say. That's, it's not easy for me to say this and to admit to this, because obviously I would be biased towards the oxygen being an amazing IM, which it is, and that by no means does it mean that now the oxygen became garbage. No, but the balance did truly impress me. So that's that. And now let's go here for the impact. So the impact, this is the impact here. There we go. As you can see, and I'm just going to place here quickly the balance so you guys can compare the two, and you can see the difference in tuning. The balance has got significantly more bass. It's got that meta style kink here in the upper mids, so it kind of lays back vocals, and it sounds, look, as I was saying, the impact, sorry, I swapped around the different one. The impact, it sounds very physical. It's got a very physical sound, without it being in your face. Okay, it's just there, it's present, and it's really good. You would think, as like I mentioned as well, with this kind of tuning, that oh no, it's going to be very V-shaped and so on and so forth. I mean, at its peak, we're talking 11 dBs, but when you take that 100 hertz point, it corresponds to 3 kilohertz. The energy that's here more than compensates for the energy that's over there in the upper mids and treble, and it just evens itself out, and it just is really, really nice. You listen to the impact and it just sounds really solid, and compared to the Puller, which is obviously the IM that it's, I think, kind of is the closest. You can see the Puller has got the same sort of bass, the same sort of everything. It's just got less energy here. I wouldn't say the difference is as significant as the graph is pointing out, but you definitely notice that there's more quality detail up top in the side of the impact as compared to the Puller, and that's basically down to a better driver. I mean, they both have resin shells, but the impact is just using a better driver, and that's that, guys. I mean, like I said, really, really solid IM. The impact, really, really solid. It didn't do anything wrong, didn't do anything that kind of offended me. It just sounds really solid, so much so that even at above $100, if it was to be priced there, I would still take it as one of my choices for one of the best IMs of this year. And if I was to briefly compare it with some of the IMs that are above that price point, I'm not going to say it's going to I would probably take the impact over something like the DX1, although it's so different that it wouldn't be exactly fair. The DX1, I placed it there, the Electro DX1, because it deserves to be there. Within its difference in terms of approach to tuning, it did a really, really good job, and so it deserves to be there. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end this over here. As always, like and subscribe. If there's any questions that you have that you want to ask me, please feel free to do so. If you want me to maybe compare the impact with something else, please feel free. But in essence, the takeaway here is, if you are a fan of the Puller, this is a significant upgrade. I'm not going to say just an upgrade. It is a significant upgrade over the Puller. And it's not easy for me to say that, because the Puller is really, really a good IM. It's not an average sounding IM. If it's one of the top IMs that under $100, it's because it's deserving of it. And the Impact is an IM which has very much the same sort of approach to tuning, but because of the better quality driver it has, and as well that open back approach that they've used, it is a better IM, and being at similar prices, it would be the best is, like I usually say, listen to both of them and then decide. But I can safely say that if you go for the Impact, you will not be disappointed. As for the balance, it just further cemented its positioning as one of the most solid IMs in its price and in its type of tuning and in the approach that it has done. And as for the Ref2019, a nice IM for what it is, I would say, although the DSP is not the way I would use it. I'd rather use it without the DSP, to be honest with you. That's it, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.